Ahoy hoy, this is Michaela from Team Retro, where we like retro games and we like the devices that bring them to us. Now, for as many flaws as the Win600 has, I've been really enjoying my time with this device. And I'm doing a 3-part series on the Anbernic Win600. My last video was on the Windows experience, and this video is part 2, the SteamOS experience. So in this video, I actually replace the stock hard drive with a 512 gigabyte Transcend drive. And we're going to install SteamOS, and we're going to do some gameplay testing and some emulation testing. Just from personal experience, I found this to be a much better fit for this device than Windows is. And I actually found that some PC games ran better under SteamOS than they did under Windows with this device. And not only did I find the overall setup experience with SteamOS to be easier, I also found that the operating system was a lot more intuitive for a handheld. It actually felt like I was playing on a Steam Deck Mini. And that's exactly the type of experience I think people who are interested in this device want. And we're going to go in depth on all of that in this video here. So let's jump in and let's get to work. So we need to do a little bit of prep work in order to get SteamOS on this device. So let's go to win.anbernic.com and let's go to the download section. If we scroll all the way down, we'll find the Win600 system firmware. So let's go ahead and click on that. There's a video tutorial, but what we want here is SteamOS firmware. So we're going to go ahead and download the win600.img file. It's a Google Drive link. So we'll go ahead and click on the link and click download. Go ahead and click download anyway, and then go ahead and let that img file download to your hard drive. Now you will need a USB drive for this next part because we're actually going to take this img file and we're going to use Balena Etcher to write the recovery image to the USB drive. Just make sure that you are using a USB drive that you don't need or that you don't have any files on, because this will wipe the USB drive and it will flash the recovery image onto the drive. But we do need this in order to install SteamOS, so you will need a USB drive for this part. And then once it's done flashing, it'll automatically eject the USB drive, and then you can go ahead and set it aside for now. Now in this video, I am replacing the stock hard drive with an M.2 Transcend 512 gigabyte drive. If you do not intend to replace your hard drive, you can skip to the next part of the video. However, if you are interested in swapping out your hard drive, then definitely stay tuned. Now you want to start by making sure you actually have the right screwdriver to remove these 4 screws on the back. I have an iFixit kit, so I used a TR7 size screw. And when I originally opened up this device in my last video to upgrade the RAM, I was a little tough with screwing the bottom screws back in, so I actually stripped them a little bit. So when you go to take the screws out, just be gentle and take your time and try not to strip them like I did, because then you're going to have a really tough time getting this device taken apart. Then when you have the screws unscrewed, you can just go ahead and take a guitar pick and just gently pry at the seam in between the device until the clips open up and the back of the device comes off. So here you can see there's the 16 gigabytes of RAM that I replaced before. And your L2 and R2 buttons may come apart during this process, but they're actually very easy to put back in. So now let's go ahead and take this glowy hard drive out. It's only held in by a single screw. So let's just go ahead and take that screw out. And this is just a regular size Phillips head screw. We're going to go ahead, set that aside, and we're just going to gently pop out this hard drive. Here is the new Transcend drive that I'm actually using. It's a SATA 3 with DRAM cache. If you go in the Win600 section of the Retro Handheld Discord, this seems to be the preferred hard drive to upgrade to, mostly because of that DRAM caching, but also because there has been a sale on this hard drive on Amazon lately. I'll leave a link in the video description. Alright, let's go ahead and pop this new hard drive in. It should just slide into place. And then we're going to take that Phillips head screw and we're just going to put that back in place, which will in turn seat the new hard drive and make sure that it's connected properly. With the hard drive in place, let's go ahead and make sure our L2 and R2 buttons are put back properly. And we're going to clip the backplate back into the system. Just go ahead and press down until you hear it click audibly. When you hear that click, you'll know that your system is put back together. Before putting the screws in, just go ahead and double check the L2 and R2 buttons to make sure that they press properly. And then let's go ahead and put this device back together. Again, just be careful with the screws. When you start to get some resistance on them, go ahead and stop tightening because then you will risk stripping them if you tighten them too tight. Alright, now that the device is put back together, let's take our USB drive with the SteamOS recovery image and let's plug that into the USB-A port on the device itself. And then just to be on the safe side, we're also going to plug the device into power just to make sure that nothing goes wrong during the installation process. Now let's go ahead and press the power button to turn the unit on, and the second the screen pops on, hold the volume down button to enter the BIOS setup. And then from there, we're going to flip our device to portrait mode, and we're going to make sure that the mouse and keyboard switch on the side is flicked on and not the controller side. And then from there, let's go ahead and use the A button to enter SanDisk Partition 1. And this is going to start up the SteamOS recovery mode. And this process is going to take a little bit of time. Just try not to touch your device while everything is booting up. And when everything is settled in, then it's going to boot you to a SteamOS desktop environment. And if you've worked with SteamOS before, it's going to look very familiar. It's going to give you a Steam Deck logo, and then it's going to take you to a Linux desktop environment that's very similar to the SteamOS desktop mode. And it's going to give you an option here called Re-Image Win600, and that's the option that we are going with here. Now it's going to give you a warning that it is going to erase the hard drive and install SteamOS, so we're going to go ahead and click Proceed. Now if you did not replace the hard drive and you just went with the stock hard drive, this will wipe your Windows installation, so make sure you actually know what your Windows product key is before you go through this process, because you will need it if you want to install Windows again in the future. And this process is going to take a little bit of time, so go ahead and step away, use the bathroom, grab a coffee or your beverage of choice, and hopefully when you come back, you will be met with a re-imaging complete option, and you could go ahead and click Proceed to restart the Win600, and it should restart into SteamOS. Now the initial boot is going to take quite a bit of time, and I actually got nervous because I thought that maybe I had screwed something up. But be patient, don't go crazy rebooting your device over and over again. It is just going to take a fair bit of time, and you're just going to be sitting on this black screen for a little bit. But trust me, it will boot up and you will end up in a SteamOS setup screen. And then just go ahead and do the setup like you would have if you had a Steam Deck. The only difference is that you are at some point in the setup process going to end up with this update error screen, because this device cannot be upgraded to the latest SteamOS. It is a specific build meant for the Win600. So you're going to end up getting that error over and over again. Just go ahead and keep clicking A until you get to this updating screen that you see here. Now, it's not actually going to download anything. You're going to be stuck on this screen until you reboot the device. So just go ahead and hold the power button on the side to shut down and reboot your device. And when it does reboot, it's going to extract the Steam package properly, and then it is going to take you to a login screen where you can then log into your Steam account. And then from there, just go ahead and log in and continue the setup process until you end up on the Steam Deck home screen. And you'll get the same quick tour that you would get with the Steam Deck, except a lot of it won't make sense because it's going to talk to you about buttons that just aren't on your device. So just go ahead and skip through it. And then when you're done, you will end up on the home screen and you could navigate it with the Win600 controls, but you can also flick the switch into keyboard and mouse mode and you can navigate the OS that way as well if you choose. And I just want you to see here that the 512 gig hard drive that we installed is the hard drive that we are indeed running SteamOS on. Now, in my last video, we actually upgraded the RAM on this device to a 16 gigabyte single channel RAM module. And we did some tweaking in the BIOS to squeeze out a little bit of performance out of that RAM chip, and we're going to do that again in this video. Except this time we're going to tweak the VRAM to 4 gigabytes instead of the default 2 gigabytes that it's already set to. So we're going to do that by starting with the device in its powered off state, and we're going to turn it on. And the second the screen turns on, we're going to hold down the volume down button to go into the boot menu. And from there, we're going to rotate our device, and we're going to make sure the keyboard and mouse toggle is switched on. And then from there, we can use the D-pad and the A button to go into Enter Setup. And then from there, we're going to go right into the BIOS menu. Go ahead and set your system language to English. And again, we're going to use the D-pad and the A button, and we're going to go to Advanced. And then we're going to go to AMD CBS. From there, we're going to go to NBIO Common Options. And we're going to go to GFX Configuration. And then we're going to make sure the UMA frame buffer size is set to 4 gigabytes. I've already done it previously. When you go into this menu, it'll be set at 2 gigabytes. Just go ahead and switch it to 4. And then we can go ahead and back out and we can save changes and exit. And then this will reboot us right back into SteamOS. And all the BIOS tweaking that I'm doing in my Win600 videos can be done with the stock RAM and the stock hard drive, but you will get slightly better performance if you upgrade the hard drive and the RAM module like I did. However, that's also going to increase the general cost of your device. So when I do the final review, we're actually going to talk about performance to cost. Because when considering this device, that is an important conversation that you need to have. But for now, let's continue talking about the SteamOS experience on this device. Now you can toggle the keyboard and mouse button on the side, and the mouse will be mapped to the right analog stick, and left click and right click will be mapped to L1 and R1 respectively. Now you very well can navigate SteamOS on the Win600 using this method, but the reason that we got this operating system to begin with is so that we can access the front end with the controller. So let's go ahead and switch the controller toggle back on. And suddenly you find that you can navigate this menu like you would on a game console. Now there are a couple of caveats to running SteamOS on the Win600. If you hit the home button, you can access the Steam menu here. but hitting the Windows and the keyboard button does the exact same thing, which is a little bit redundant, and it also causes problems when you need to access the keyboard on this device. Specifically in desktop mode, because when I went to go set up EMU Deck, I needed to have a Bluetooth keyboard connected because I just could not get the virtual keyboard to come up in any way. However, if you hold A and press the home button, you can access the quick settings menu, but you cannot access any other Steam shortcuts that you would have had access to on the Steam Deck. This is the only shortcut you have access to. And it does make navigating the OS on this device a lot clunkier than it should be. And there are just little quirks here and there that I hope are addressed in future updates, which the system cannot be updated over the air, so I have no idea how those updates will come. Another thing to take note is that in order to put the system in sleep mode, you have to do it from the Steam menu. You cannot do it from pressing the sleep-wake button on the side. However, you can press that button to wake the device, so it's just very quirky and very weird, almost like we're operating this in a beta stage. But let's go ahead and jump into some PC gameplay. Starting off with LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, I could not get this to be at a stable frame rate. It would hit 30 FPS sometimes, even at low settings, and even with the tweaks that I had done in the BIOS. There was no audio stutter or anything like that, but the gameplay was definitely slower than it should have been, and to me, I would consider this unplayable. And while most games I tested got faster with cutscenes, this game actually got slower when it came to the cutscenes playing. And I'm going to turn the sound up in a minute because I want you to also hear that for some reason gameplay was not that loud even at max volume, but you can also hear the fan was really going, which means this device got hotter than it has previously. And that increased heat could be due to the tweaks that I had made, so it is absolutely worth pointing out. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was another game that I had struggled to get full frame rate out of. It just ran in slow motion. However, running under SteamOS actually improved my experience playing Final Fantasy XIV. Even with the resolution brought down to 540p and running under standard laptop settings, I was able to get the game to run in full screen mode where I couldn't under Windows, and as a result the game looked a lot less potato. I was also able to force the resolution change under the SteamOS settings, whereas I could not change the resolution in Windows, so I was able to get a much more stable frame rate. And you could see here, gameplay may not be the best, but it's definitely smoother than it was in my last video. And so those are the games I tested for the Win600 under SteamOS that really tested the limits of this device. But let me take a few minutes and I'm just going to stop talking and I'm going to showcase some games that actually worked very well on this device. And I apologize in advance, while the footage is playing, you may hear some weird ambient television noises in the background. My wife was watching TV in the other room, and I didn't have the heart to ask her to turn the volume down, so we're just gonna go with it, and hopefully you're okay with the footage.
of my way. That's what you get.
Now let's jump into emulation. And you can set up EMU Deck and Emulation Station Desktop Edition in order to play some of your lower end retro systems on this device. And I did make a video on how to set up EMU Deck on the Steam Deck, and you can set this up very similarly for this device as well. And you'll get a very nice front end, which you can scrape for box art. I haven't done this yet. But once this is properly set up, you'll actually have a nice little one-stop shop for all of your retro game systems. And you'll find that just like with the Steam Deck, your lower end systems, NES, SNES, Game Boy, those will work just fine. And one thing I like about EMU Deck is it takes all of the heavy lifting that you would need to do to set up these systems, and it does it for you, including setting up aspect ratios as well as bezels. And truth be told, I always found the Steam Deck to be a little bit cumbersome when it came to playing these lower end systems, because I have devices that are much more portable that can handle these systems just fine. But here on the Anbernic Win600, these systems actually felt right at home. And just like on the Windows side, I particularly was impressed with how wonderful Game Boy Advance looked on this system. And throughout this video, you'll probably notice that we're doing the Metroid test just like we did on the Windows side. And with Game Boy Advance working so well, Metroid Zero Mission and Metroid Fusion seem to work very well and will be a joy to play on this device. Now, usually when I test Sonic Adventure 2, I'm testing it on the Dreamcast side, but here we're actually playing Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the GameCube, which is actually a lot harder to emulate than the Dreamcast version. However, we are running the superior GameCube version of this game, and we're running it at 60. However, these analog sticks are still something to be desired on this device, so even though this is very playable, I don't know that I would necessarily consider it fun. Here's some very quick Super Metroid just to show you that SNES does run very well on this device. And this should handle even Super FX and SA1 games with no problem at all. Here's the obligatory God of War test for PSP emulation, and we are running at a 3x resolution, and we are getting 60 frames per second. So if this system can handle this particular PSP game, it's going to handle the majority of the library with no problem at all. Even Wii seem to run very well on this device. I tested out Mario Kart Wii and didn't seem to have any trouble there. And I also tested out Donkey Kong Country Returns, and EMU Deck was able to map motion to the L and R buttons, so it made this game very playable. And while I didn't go into the Dolphin settings to check the resolution, it does look pretty upscaled here, and it does look very nice. So if you're looking to play some later end Donkey Kong games, this might be the system to do it on. Ikaruga is running very well for Dreamcast. I didn't seem to have any trouble with Dreamcast games under the Flycast core in RetroArch. This was a system that could be emulated even on lower end Rockchip Anbernic devices, so it doesn't really strike me as any surprise that it works very well here. And now let's move on to 3DS, and I was surprised by how well this ran at a 2x resolution. Now, under SteamOS on the Steam Deck, I seem to struggle to get 3DS games to run decently, but for some reason here, it's not breaking a sweat. And I don't know if it's the 3050E chip or the 16GB RAM upgrade I put on this device, or maybe I just need to go back to my Steam Deck and update EMU Deck because maybe there are some better optimizations that were made to the Citra standalone. But as it stands right now, if it weren't for these horrible analog sticks, I would actually prefer playing 3DS on this device as opposed to the Steam Deck. Not just because of performance, but also because this is a smaller, more portable device. However, 3DS games that don't require as finicky controls like New Super Mario Bros. 2, which I can use the D-pad for, or maybe even the Pokemon series, which doesn't require finicky controls as it's a turn-based RPG, those might be a better fit for this device than something a little bit more action-oriented like Samus Returns. Generally, with any system that I tested, if I was given the option to use the D-pad over the analog sticks, I had a much better experience with that particular game. Now, this device is capable of Switch emulation, but on my initial testing, I was struggling to get decent frame rates. Games would dip, even Metroid Dread, which is very easy to emulate, was running under 30 FPS and was looking a little sluggish. And I was getting similar problems in Pokemon games like Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu. The main character here is just running very slow, and we're running frame rates at like 24 to 26 frames per second, and it just makes the game feel very sluggish. However, I was getting 30 frames per second in the battles. which got me wondering if I just needed to tweak some settings. So what I actually did was I turned off disk pipeline cache, asynchronous GPU emulation, and accelerate ASTC texture decoding. I read somewhere on Reddit that on the Steam Deck, these settings needed to be turned off to get some better performance. And sure enough, I did notice a slight improvement in the Pokemon games. Prior to tweaking this setting, the battles in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond were running at 21 to 25 frames per second, and now they're slightly dipping, but they're pretty consistent at 30 frames. And the same goes for traversing the overworld. Things seem slightly less sluggish with those settings turned off. And if we go back to Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, it still shows that the frame rates are lower, but things do seem to be slightly faster. The main character still seems to be a little bit faster when he's walking, and battles or catching screens do seem to be running at 30 still. I'm not sure what it is about these settings that gave me slightly better performance, but if you are struggling to play Switch games, go ahead into your graphics settings and try unchecking those 3 settings and see what happens. And under the right conditions, this device can emulate Switch pretty well if you pick the right games. Live Alive seems to be mostly playable on this device, and you'll get the upgraded experience as opposed to playing the original Super Nintendo version. Whereas other games like Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, which is a very 2D game, will run at 60 no problem. And that's due to the fact that it is a lighter, easy to emulate game. Alright, we've covered a lot of ground in this video with the SteamOS Experience, so let's wrap things up with Commendations and Condemnations. And we're going to talk about this device specifically in regards to the SteamOS Experience. And so we're going to start with our emulation experience, and I just found that Wii U, Switch, and 3DS emulation were a lot more impressive on this device than they were on the Windows side, and thanks to the magic of EMU Deck, everything seemed to just work. And the only thing that might impress me more than the SteamOS experience is going to be the upcoming Batocera experience, which is supposed to be optimized even more for retro gaming. However, here on the SteamOS side, you still have many Steam games that are playable on this device, even though you may have to play them with low settings or do a couple of tweaks here and there. You can get a good experience out of a great many PC games. And you get them with the convenience of the intuitive SteamOS front end. And I mentioned this about a minute ago, but having EMU Deck available on this device just makes it easy to set up retro gaming. So if you're more of a plug-and-play type of person, then you're going to want to opt for the SteamOS experience over the Windows experience. And then I'm going to mention this again in this video, and I'll probably mention it in any of my other Win600 videos, and that's that this device is available now. While you may not necessarily have the power and versatility of the Steam Deck, you will have the availability. I ordered this with expedited shipping, and I had it within a week and a half, as opposed to the months it took me to get my hands on a Steam Deck. So availability is absolutely something to consider if you are thinking about this device. However, all of these commendations come with an equal amount of condemnations. And most of these have to do with the hardware as opposed to the SteamOS software. And we're going to start with the fact that no matter what OS you put on this device, battery life is still bad. It's slightly better than running Windows with all the overhead, but I'm still only averaging about an hour and a half on Final Fantasy and maybe about 3 hours max for a lower powered game. Further marred by the fact that not all buttons and features of SteamOS work on this device, including the option to adjust the TDP. The toggle is there, but like many other YouTubers who reviewed this device and this operating system, I could not get the TDP to actually work either, even though I did adjust the toggle as necessary. And that's something that I'm hoping will get fixed down the line, because I really do enjoy the SteamOS experience over the Windows experience, but I can also see how some people will want to stick with Windows just to be able to adjust that TDP. Joystick button placement will always be an issue, but on top of that, the joysticks just don't seem to be all that easy to use. And that became very apparent with the more recent Metroid games. There were times I just struggled to aim properly or shoot where I wanted to shoot. And then finally, in order to get the performance that you saw in this video, you may have to spend more money to upgrade your RAM and your hard drive. So now when you consider the price of admission for this device, you're probably adding another $70 to $100 on top of that. In which case, you may find other devices in the works or available soon that will actually render the Win600 obsolete, because you may get better performance out of those devices and they may ultimately end up being cheaper. However, that said, I'm going to mirror some other YouTubers by saying that in the right context, this device is actually very much enjoyable. And I found that putting SteamOS on this device did indeed improve the experience. However, your mileage may vary depending on what you want to do with this device. For example, someone mentioned in the comments of my last video that GOG games or games that require other launchers may not be accessible on the SteamOS experience, in which case you'll probably want to stick with using Windows. However, for me personally, I found that installing SteamOS actually enhanced what I wanted to get out of this device and made it more enjoyable for me. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you willing to deal with some of the bugginess of SteamOS to get a better experience? Or do you think Windows is ultimately the way to go on this device? And don't forget, there's also Batocera, which could blow both of these operating systems out of the water, which we'll find out in part 3 of this series. So please stay tuned for that, but that'll do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. And please feel free to continue the conversation in the Budget Aquaman Discord. Link will be in the video description. Again, thank you for watching, and if this video was helpful to you in any way, please be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, bye for now, and don't stop believing.